Hello, soul sister. Welcome for another episode. I've got Kute Blackson in the house. Kute, what a pleasure. I am so excited to have some time with you.
Thanks for having me.
Wow. I've known about you for years. I saw something of yours years ago. I don't remember what it was because it was years ago. And I went, wow, this man is onto something. And it's just such a treat to have you. And some of my listeners and watchers may not know what you're up to. So let me give them a quickie. Kute is a beloved inspirational speaker for sure, and transformational teacher. And he speaks at events all around the world. He organizes them all around the world. He's won a bunch of awards. He's a member of the Transformational Leadership Council. And oh my God, I can go on and on. But one of the things I think that's just so special, I want to say the winner of the 2019 Unity New Thought Walden Award. That is so wonderful. Blackson is widely considered a next generation leader in the field of personal development. And his mission is simple. And I just love this: to awaken and inspire people across the planet to access inner freedom, live authentically, and fulfill their true life's purpose. So now you know why he's here, because those are the themes that I'm always speaking to, and I bring on people that are walking their talk and bringing this message out. So yay, yay. So we're going to just dive right in. You have a new book out, and it's called The Magic of Surrender. And surrender is a huge topic. So what inspired you to write it?
This wasn't the book I thought I was going to write. This wasn't the book I wanted to write. I had my own agenda and idea of the book I thought I would write. And I sat down one day and I had an entire whiteboard full of ideas. I started to brainstorm and strategize books I thought would be a bestseller, books I thought my audience would want, books I thought my publishers would buy. And the truth is, none of the ideas, I had maybe 75 brilliant ideas, and none of those ideas felt aligned. None of those ideas felt true. Like, if I was honest, none of them felt truly authentic. When I looked at them, I thought, wow, they could do well, but it didn't feel, there was not an alignment, an integrity in my being, in my soul. The only word that stood out for me that felt true, that felt aligned, that felt authentic was the word surrender. This little word at the bottom of the whiteboard. And I thought, oh, that like, I could feel the energy, like that is the book.
Yeah.
And I resisted it because, you know, we have so many misconceptions about surrender. Is something we kind of heard about, know we should do, but we resist, like going to the dentist. And so I thought, would people want to read about surrender? Do I really want to write about surrender? And so I had to surrender to the book about surrender, the book that was seeking to be written. And I felt as though the book had a soul of its own in a certain sense. And in that moment, everything about myself and about my life just kind of made sense. I understood my purpose. I understood how everything in my life had been preparing me to write this book on surrender. And so as I reflected back over the last few years, I also saw that the last few years were preparing me to write this book on surrender.
Oh my God.
My mother, bless her soul, a beautiful Japanese woman, the person I was probably the closest to in my life. I loved her profoundly. She raised me. She loved me. I mean, I know love because of this woman.
Oh my gosh.
She was diagnosed with stomach cancer in 2016. And it was really devastating. And so I was living in Los Angeles. She lived in London. I began to fly back and forth from LA to London every month, basically, for a week. And I would spend a week with her in chemo. I would take care of her every month for a week.
Good son.
For an entire year, basically. And I was back and forth. And so about 6 to 7 months in this process, the doctors finally said to her, I'll never forget the moment, the day in the hospital room, they looked at us in the eyes, and this woman doctor said, look, there's nothing else we can do for you.
Yeah.
We don't, basically, get your affairs in order. We don't know how long you have. It's maybe days, maybe weeks, maybe months, but it's definitely not years. And said, hey, we're sorry about this, but do what you can. And so it was such a deep moment when you realize that the person you love the most is going to die. And so I
I know
remember
that
looking,
I know that
yeah,
feeling. Yeah.
yeah. I looked my mother in the eyes and I asked her two questions. The first question was, are you afraid? And
Mm,
she looked me in the eyes and she said, without any hesitation, I'm not afraid because I know that I'm not this body. This body is just a temporary vehicle for my soul. And when this body dies, which it will die, um, I won't die. I'll be with you from the other side, guiding you. So I'm not afraid. And then I looked at my mother, wanting to be a good son. And I said, is there anything I can do for you in your final days? What do you need? What do you want? What can I buy
wow.
for you? Like, where do you want to go? And she looks me in the eyes and she says, there's nothing that I want and there's nothing that I need. The only thing I want, the only thing I need is what God wants for my life. And it was such a simple statement. But in that moment, I realized that the seed for surrender was planted in that moment. And the seed for the book was planted in that moment. Because my mother, during this year, she was a very emotional person. But during this year, she was at peace. I never saw her cry. I never saw her complain. She
Yeah.
was totally calm. And what I saw when she responded was she wasn't attached to living. She wasn't attached to dying. She was totally surrendered to the highest unfolding and trajectory of her soul's journey. She
Yeah.
was surrendered. And in that surrender, she was free. And so as I'm
Oh,
looking at this whiteboard, I really
yes.
saw that surrender is the password to freedom. And
Yes.
that was the key to her peace and equanimity, even in the midst of a very difficult life situation. You know, sometimes we think surrender is just for the yogis in the Himalayas, but even in the face of your mortality, surrender is a key. And so
Oh,
what I
I love
saw,
this. Yeah.
yeah, what I saw was surrender is the most, what I felt was surrender is the most powerful thing that you can do. That
Yeah.
surrender is the real secret to manifestation. It
All right,
is
I'm
the
going to
real
pause you
key.
there. Secret to manifestation, key. Here's your mom, and obviously huge role model, huge role model. And that was her connection to God, her connection to
That
surrender.
was her
And
journey.
she's gifting you her journey.
Yeah, but I
I'm
didn't know it.
wondering, how was your journey when it came to surrendering to this whole experience with your mom? Obviously,
Yeah,
for this.
I had to go through a process of surrendering because in the beginning, I wanted to make her well. I wanted to heal her, get her well,
Yeah.
force her to have a certain kind of diet. And the truth is, she wasn't really cooperating. She was just on her own path. And I was,
Yeah.
and the less she cooperated, the more upset I was becoming, which was defeating the whole point of being with her. And so
Yeah.
I had to, like, for the first 6 months, I was a process of just letting go and
Yep.
allowing her experience, which freed me up to just be with her, which
Oh,
freed me up rather than trying to force feed her juices and vegetables and get more
right.
upset that
Against
she
what she
wasn't.
wants. Yeah.
Yeah, I just got to just hold her hand and just love her, you know. And so every
Mm,
moment became precious. And that's why I feel as though surrender is the real key to the next level of our lives. If you look at the truly great ones, Jesus, Buddha, Gandhi, Mother Teresa, Mandela, Martin Luther King, you know, Bruce Lee, Muhammad Ali. I mean, the list goes on. At some point,
yeah.
they all surrendered themselves
Yeah.
to their souls. They surrendered themselves to their deeper impulse. They surrendered themselves to the divine. They surrendered themselves to God. They surrendered themselves to their higher calling. In that surrender, they transcended their human limitations and they were able to tap into another dimension of life. And that's when they transcended their human limitations. And that's when I think life began to use them and life began to express through them and life began to manifest through them in that surrender.
Absolutely.
And so I think that's the magic. You know, we all want magic in our lives, but we don't want to surrender. But the password to the magic,
Okay,
magic,
the password is surrender. The magic's in the surrender, and
it's all
it's
in the
the
surrender.
key. And
Yeah.
so you're laying down all these amazing people that we put on these, like, wow, look what they did, and how do I be the Buddha? How do I be the Christ-like spirit? All of those things. What might be a first step for someone that's going,
Yeah.
well, it's great for Buddha.
I think I really want to just set the context for what surrender is,
Please, please.
because there's so many misconceptions about surrender.
Yeah.
You know, before I even say, well, here's what to do, people are still
What
going to be
is it?
thinking like,
Yeah.
well, what the hell is
Yeah.
what the hell
Yeah.
is surrender?
What is this concept?
Like there's this idea that surrender is giving up. Surrender is waving the white flag. Surrender is being taken advantage of. Surrender means you
Right.
get left behind. Surrender means you're not going to manifest. Surrender means you're not going to manifest your goals, dreams, and desires. Surrender
Right.
means you're going to get less in life. And I'm actually saying,
Giving
no,
up. Yeah.
if you really surrender, like, what if you didn't get less, but you got more than you could have even imagined
Oh,
and
yeah.
visualized with your limited ego's capacity, which the ego is limited. And so surrender is a letting go of control, or
Yeah.
we should say the illusion that you were in control in the first place. It
Yeah.
is when you stop trying to force and manipulate life to fit your limited idea based on your ego's limitation, how you think life should be and who you think you should be. It's when you take the limitations off of life and
Yeah.
you're available and you're open and you're receptive to allowing life to show you. And so that's the essence of what surrender is.
I love that. I'm so glad you did bring us back there, because it really, there's a lot of beliefs around what surrender means, the giving up, the letting go, and and it's so much more than that. And there's something to be said about releasing the shoulds, all the conditioning, all the things that we think we need to do. And when we can really release that, I mean, that's when the magic happens. And these women that are listening, they're like, oh my God, but I want a partner. And, I should have started earlier. And they're so in their fear of, I'm getting older and I don't know if it's possible. And what you're laying down here is allowing yourself to be and trust in the journey. And they might be going, oh, sounds great, but how do I do it? That sounds really scary. What if I don't go online every single day? How do I let go of the control? Because so much is the fear of.
Well, I think you have to look at is what you're doing right now working.
Boom. Right. And how is it feeling?
Is what you're doing working, and how is it making you feel?
Yeah.
And if it's working, do more of it. And likely, if it's working, probably you may not be listening to this conversation. And so we have to just look at, is what I'm doing working? Is what I'm doing bringing me more peace? Is what I'm doing leading to the result I want? And so when we can look at that, we can start getting honest. You talked about, you asked a moment ago, what's a first step that people can take? So here's what I would say on a practical level. One of the things that stops us from surrendering and stops us from breaking through and stops us from letting go are all the ways that we lie to ourselves. As human beings, for reasons which we can get into, we're constantly lying to ourselves about who we are, about what we feel, about what we want. We stay in relationships that we know are not aligned.
Yeah.
We knew in the beginning, we knew 2 months into it, but we stay out of comfort, out of familiarity, out of fear, out of I'll never find love again. And then we wonder why we're in pain. And so we work jobs that we know it's not the purpose for why we were born. We say yes when we mean no in order to get love, validation, and approval, and we end up betraying ourselves so that people around us will love us and be with us, and so that we won't be abandoned, and then wonder why we feel in such pain. And so I would invite people as a first step just to sit with, okay, not even worry about some idea of surrendering. Just start with, what lies am I telling myself? What lies am I telling myself? And just begin to get really honest and sincere about telling yourself the truth about who you are, what you feel, and what you want. Just honestly.
It's a big deal, to be honest. I mean, people really tell themselves a lot of stories, and, I'm a shadow worker. So there's all the conditioning and all the, what are their beliefs? And I love that. How is it working for you? How is it feeling? And to just start there is being honest with, it ain't working. It's not feeling good. Something isn't in alignment. I love the radical honesty that we need to face, because if we're not honest, we continue to suffer. Yeah, so good.
And so if you just start with, what lies am I telling myself? And I always also invite people to take the pressure off of yourself of having to take any action, because sometimes the fear of the consequence of telling the truth starts blocking ourselves from
100%.
acknowledging the truth as an ego's sort of strategy of protecting ourselves. So, I'm afraid, if I'm really honest, that I'm no longer in love, then I'm going to have to break up, but I'm afraid of that. So let me just, I'm not sure if this person is right. I don't know. When we know deep down, there's a part of us that knows everything. because at the deepest level, we are connected to everything, and we have a sense. And so I think if we can take the pressure off of ourselves from having to take action, then we can just free ourselves to say, okay, you don't have to leave the relationship, you don't have to end, you don't have to break up, you don't have to get a divorce, you don't have to give 30 days notice, but just acknowledge the truth.
Yeah.
I hate my job, and just sit with the truth. The truth will begin setting you free. The truth is real spiritual practice. There's no transformation without truth. I'm no longer in love with this person, haven't been for 3 years. Just feel that. You don't have to do anything. Just feel that. I have an alcohol problem. Okay. Just feel that. That starts getting you into relationship with the truth. Then you can deal with the feeling that's underneath that and see what emerges, see if there could be a breakthrough, see if there could be healing, see if you need to leave the relationship. But from the truth, that begins a process of surrender. But often we don't want to tell the truth because the ego wants to preserve its sense of self and comfort and familiarity. And so what lies am I telling myself? What am I pretending to not know? When we feel pain, this is why I ask the question, is it working for you? Because often it's not. And we feel pain, but we keep doing what we're doing and keep continuing down a path that doesn't work out of familiarity. When we are lying to ourselves, which is, you could say, one of the ego strategies of staying in denial so that we don't have to surrender, it's a form of resistance. When we're lying to ourselves, we're going to feel pain. Pain is the result of living out of integrity. Pain is the result of not being connected to our truth or betraying part of ourselves. So on some level, when you feel pain, you're healthy. Something is working inside. It's not meant to feel good. I lie to myself and I feel great. I lie to myself and I feel not so great. I feel terrible. I feel off. And that pain might manifest as emotional pain, depression, lack of aliveness and joy and
this
vitality.
Is where addictions come in, because people are in pain. So I don't know what to do about it. The ego's going, don't do anything, because at least you know your pain. And then they go, well, let me numb it out with drinking. Let me numb it out with.
We distract ourselves. We drink it away, sex it away, smoke it away, drug it away, shop it away.
And that's not the thing.
Meditate it away,
spiritual bypass.
Spiritual bypass. And we don't deal with it. But to me, pain is feedback. Pain is a gift. Pain is a friend.
I got goosebumps.
Is a blessing. And so part of the surrender is to just acknowledge the pain, surrender to feeling the pain and asking yourself, what is the message of this pain? What is the feedback? What is this pain trying to tell me that I need to look into and deal with? And that's, you could say, a first step of surrender, just starting with the truth.
I love this. Oh my God. It's one of my favorite topics. So I just love this. And one of the things that I'm hearing you say also is it's not just thinking your way through it, it's feeling it, because we can't think our way through a lot of the stuff because of the ego, because of the protective mechanisms. And when we can sit in our reality and really be in our reality, we hear information if we're open to it. So I love that that's the first step of just be honest with what's going on and feel, because the feeling will lead you to the next step.
Yes.
So good. So good. Tell me more about your book. Like when it comes to surrendering, you have this person, they're resisting, they're being in their, first step, feeling in their body, feeling it's not working. What else might you be guiding them? And I don't, obviously you're not going to give your book away, but what are some of the other?
I mean, I'm happy to give it all away, but the truth is, surrender is not necessarily like a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 methodology or formula.
Right.
It's a process of living. But what I will say is, I think I'm just understanding, like, resistance is natural. It's okay. Surrendering to, you don't have to resist the resistance. So sometimes people go, oh, surrender. I've got to surrender now. Why am I not surrendering? What's wrong with me for not surrendering? Like, resistance is natural. If we didn't have some resistance, we would be Buddha. And so as human beings, embrace the resistance and meet the resistance with open heart, with surrender, with an embrace, with compassion. Because when you understand the nature of the resistance, it transforms your relationship to the resistance, it transforms your relationship 100%. To life, and it transforms your relationship to surrender. And so you don't have to resist the resistance. The truth is, what resists or the mechanism, and you mentioned it, the mechanism that resists is the ego. The ego, when you understand it, it transforms your relationship to surrender. The ego is that which you could say, mistakenly believe ourselves to be and become so identified as. The ego, in the way I'm speaking, is a kind of reaction to certain things that happen, that we develop adaptive patterns and ways of being that we hold so tightly onto, when we end up thinking it's me, and it gets reinforced by life. And the degree to which we believe ourselves to be this mind-body mechanism based on past memories, thoughts, experiences, and belief systems, and hold on to that, the degree to which we believe, oh, I am this thing, this person, is the degree to which we will often resist surrender. Because for the ego, that which we believe ourselves to be, for the ego, surrender feels like a death. Surrender. And so the natural resistance is the ego strategy of avoiding death, because the job of the ego is, you could say, twofold. Number one, to make sure that you don't get hurt again like you were hurt when you were very young. Number two, to reinforce your sense of self and existence. And so resistance is natural. So when resistance arises, no big deal. You don't have to fight it. Just look at it, understand it, and embrace it. You see, when we were children, surrender was our natural state. Surrender is our natural state. We've just become conditioned out of it. We were born free. We were these free beings. We were children. We jump on the table naked. We would sing. We didn't care if we didn't sound like
censor ourselves.
Bruno
We just
Mars.
were.
We were just being whatever we were being, fully free, fully vibrant. So what happened? I think if we understand what happened, it can transform our relationship to surrender. We incarnated into this body, into this human experience. We met our parents. God bless them. They were doing the best that they knew how to do based on their life and
their conditioning and all the things that they want.
Right? And so we were born into a generational kind of preset pattern of conditioning. And maybe dad was crazy. Maybe mom was an alcoholic. Maybe there was pain, abuse, sexual, mental, emotional dysfunction. Maybe they were great people, but they just didn't have the emotional intelligence to know how to meet our needs. And that was painful. So two things happened. Number one, we start learning all sorts of strategies to shut down, disconnect, not feel, suppress. We erect walls around our heart and feeling sensitivity to just function and survive. That becomes a strategy of control. And so now unconsciously, we kind of mistakenly feel like we go through. So what worked for us when we were 5, we keep doing when we're 10 and 15 and 25. So now we think, oh, if I can control my feelings,
I'll be safe. I'll fit in. I won't be loved. I won't be left.
So control ends up becoming the strategy that we end up learning to do as adults, 30-year-olds, 50-year-olds, 60-year-olds, thinking that if I can control, I'm not going to get hurt like I did when I was 5, because when I was 5, my heart was so open and my heart was so available, and dad left. My heart was so open, available, and my parents didn't meet my needs, and that was so painful, and I don't want to feel that again, so I'm going to close my heart, shut down, not feel, and now I go into my intellect, go into my mind, and now I'm going to go through life. And what kind of relationships are you going to attract from that standpoint? Either you're not going to be available to allowing someone into your heart, to allowing someone to connect with the truth of who you are, not because you're bad, just because you're self-protecting. And so when you understand that, it shifts your ability to start meeting yourself with compassion. And
boom, I was literally just going to say that. You start to be more gentle with, I was really just trying to get through. I was a little kid. I didn't know how to do this. And when we can really be gentle with ourselves and have compassion, then we get to dance with the fear and dance with this ego, and then understand it, and then have more choice. And that's when we're able to really let go of the wheel, for sure. I just love this. And I wanted to add that I remember I was at a Tony Robbins event many years ago, and he was talking about fear and control. And he said, I want the biggest man in the audience. And he got like this big man come up with the biggest muscles. And he's like, he resist me. Right. And so there was like the fight of the muscles. And then he's like, okay, resist me again. And he started dancing with the guy. oh, he just kept following this big guy. And suddenly it was beautiful. So at first it was like, no, I'm not going to go there. And the next thing you know, he's surrendering and he's moving with it. And he used that as the metaphor of when you can be with it, when you can allow yourself with it. And to your point, when we can understand why it's there, that is just, it's just mind blowing, literally mind blowing. Cause like, oh, my dad left me, or my dad died, or it's like, oh, that was me closing off my heart and it's not working for me anymore. And that's the beginning of the healing and the opportunity. That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah. Then we can learn how to meet those parts of ourselves that learn to disconnect, learn to shut down, learn to not feel, learn to resist, learn to control, right? Then we can meet those parts of ourselves with compassion and loving. And you could say part of how healing happens is bringing loving and compassion to those parts of ourselves that have been wounded and those parts of ourselves that have been hurting. And so it's not about just let go and surrender. It's like, no, let me meet my resistance with some loving. Let me meet my resistance with tenderness. Let me meet my resistance with compassion, knowing why I am resisting and why I am running away from relationship and why I can keep choosing unavailable men, why I keep choosing relationships where people don't commit to me. Like, there's often a reason that is driving that. Even though we say we don't want that, there's often a reason. So if we can start meeting those parts of ourselves with compassion and loving, then healing can happen. And then those aspects that have been resisting in some way can relax.
Beautiful. So well said.
And come into wholeness, And so it's the ego, or that which we perceive ourselves to be, that tends to resist and tends to not want to surrender as a strategy of control. And it means well. And so when we understand, it means well, I'm resisting because I mean well, then it just changes the game. The ego doesn't want to change. The ego wants everything and everyone else to change, but it doesn't want to change. And that's how we stay the same. That's why sometimes change can feel hard. Letting go of beliefs can feel hard, because often holding on to who we were, holding on to a negative belief can be a form of control. Like if I hold on to this belief, like I'm unworthy and I'm not enough, well, it's kind of obvious we should let it go. So we go to seminars like, okay, let me change this belief and let it go, but I'm still holding on to it. And while we tend to hold on to even those beliefs that are limiting in some way, as an example, I'm unworthy, I'm not enough, is a form of control. Because as children, maybe we weren't loved in the way we needed. So we made it mean I'm not worthy and I'm not enough. Which is a form of control, because if I am not worthy and it's my fault and I'm not enough, then I have some, in quotation marks, control to be able to change my hairstyle, lose some weight, move cities, buy a car. If I can make $1 billion, then maybe I'm going to be enough. So it gives us this false sense of control to try to seek a sense of validation and worth by changing myself. But if we have to really surrender and accept the truth, which becomes, well, my dad was not capable. In that moment, we can feel like, well, now I don't have control. If the truth being my dad was not capable, which is what it was, then there's nothing I can do anymore. And because we're kind of seeking to avoid that grief and that, momentary pain,
and the mystery.
We tend to hold on.
We don't know what's coming. So it's like, okay, this is what I know. This is my identity. Let me at least hold on to this. If I really let go of this, that ego, I call it the risk manager. It's going to be like, well, what's going to happen? How is this going to be? And so having that understanding and that gentleness and that compassion allows us to do the healing, allows us to lean in. I love it. And I love how you tied it to some of the women that are listening and their challenges around relationship, because they are holding tight for a lot of reasons and recreating a lot of the same patterns because it's what they know, and surrendering might be scary. So you've just given so much. Thank you so much. I know you have an event. Well, before we go on to the event,
one thing I would just say that might help some of the women listening. Is, I've worked with a lot of women. I used to do an event for 10 years, specifically a weekend seminar for women. We'd have 200-300 women in the room for a weekend. And it was really profound. And one thing I would say to the women listening is, don't let your idea of who and what you want in a mate and what you think you should have get in the way of the divine intelligence. Don't let what you think you want and the goal of the person that you think should be your soulmate get in the way of the soulmate that is truly aligned with your highest good. Because sometimes we set the goal of who we think we should be with. He's got to be like this, he's got to be like this, he's got to be like this, he's got to be like this. And we don't realize that the ego with which we're deciding from is conditioned by past programming. And many times what we think we want is just what we think we want based on who we think we are. And sometimes our goal list can be a projection of unmet needs from childhood. And we think that this is the person we need. And we're so attached to this idea that we're not available to the infinite grace and blessing and intelligence of the divine. And you could say the divine knows, your soul knows. And I'm not saying just be with anybody, random person. I'm saying have a sense, but don't get so attached to, he's got to have brown hair and he's got to be tall. He's got to be this. He's got to go to Harvard. It's just be open and available.
Yeah.
Universe, yeah, I would like this, but I'm open and available because the person, your soulmate that shows up in your life, a true soulmate is not designed or meant to fit into your ego's limitation. A true soulmate is really meant to break your heart open to that next level of loving. And a true soulmate is really meant to free you of your conditioning. And sometimes the soulmate won't fit your ego's type or pattern of who you think it is. And sometimes we're so attached that we're not able to see the person that is right meant for us, right in front of us. And so surrender is like, okay, this or something better. I'm open, and I don't know. The woman, my wife, who's the most incredible gift that God has ever given me, is not the person I thought I would be with. But she is that and more and beyond. But it didn't fit into my ego's limited idea. And so don't put limitations on life, on the universe. And that's what happens when you surrender. My mother, I mean, I don't know if you want to hear the whole story, but the way my parents met, the short version in a nutshell. You want to hear the story?
We have time, and you are so amazing. Keep
going. I think the women might resonate with this. Now, it's a seemingly out there story, but look, my father's from Ghana, West Africa. My mother's Japanese. My mother couldn't speak English. My father speaks no Japanese. My father's as African as you can get. My mother is as Japanese as you can get. The story in a couple of minutes goes like this. And this may inspire some of the women to just surrender a bit more. In that, my father, born in 1935, he was considered the miracle man of Africa, was a healer, would heal people. People would come in, blind people, deaf people, wheelchairs. And so one day my father had built his 300 churches. He was 37 years old. This is in the mid-70s. He was walking through a store in Ghana. This is, before internet, right? Before technology. A book falls off the shelf. Now, meanwhile, when he was an 8-year-old kid, he would have these visions of a Japanese guru. Japanese spiritual teacher would come to him and download in his dreams about life. He didn't know this guy was real, but the guy would just teach him about the universe. When my father was 15, he became a Christian. He had a conversion, started his churches, but became a very mystical guy. When he's 37, a book falls off the shelf. He looks at the back of the book. He sees the face of this Japanese guru in Ghana, West Africa. He is shocked. He didn't know that this guy was real. This is the man that had been coming to him in his dreams. He writes to the man sends his son-in-law to Ghana to meet my father. The son-in-law is so impressed, invites my father to Japan to go on a lecture tour with the guru, to meet the guru and do a stadium tour with the guru. My father accepts. My father said to the son-in-law, before I come to Japan, look, I'm looking for a wife. Please pray for me because I believe in the power of prayer. And which is, essentially surrendering. I surrender. And so the son-in-law says, I will. The son-in-law goes back to Japan, gives a lecture, announces the dates for my father's tour with the guru in Japan. My mother, her parents were part of this guru's organization. My mother grew up, this was her spiritual teacher. My mother was 28 at the time. In Japan, if you're not married by 25, your life is over. Forget it. You're old. End of story. You know,
Yeah.
you're basically, you're done. And so my mother's 28. She's not married. She says a prayer right before this event. And her prayer was, God, I will marry. Talk about surrender, right? I will marry anyone you tell me to marry. I don't care who he is. I don't care where he's from. I don't care what job he has. I just bring me the highest version of my soulmate that is destined for me in this lifetime. That was like no limits to that prayer. Is like, bring me the highest possibility. I surrender. She's in the audience. When she hears about this African guy coming to Japan to go on the lecture tour, she says she felt a chill in her whole body. And she felt this sense, this is my husband. She decides to write to my father. My father speaks no Japanese. She speaks no English. Her sister translates. Nothing romantic, just I look forward to hearing you speak in Japan when you come on this tour. My father is meditating. He goes to the mailbox. He opens he goes to, picks up this letter. Before he opens the letter, he says, this is my wife. I have a feeling. His hands start to shake. He opens the letter. It's my mother. Nothing romantic. He writes back to her two things. The first letter, he says, would you be open to moving to Ghana? First letter, right? My dad doesn't play. She writes back and says, if it's God's will, I will move. They haven't seen each other. No Facebook, no Instagram. He writes back and says, yes, it's God's will. Marry me. She says, yes. They agree to get married. No pictures, no photos. He goes to Japan. They meet for the first time before his lecture. They agree to get married, like officially. He meets the parents. Last part of the story is this. He goes on this lecture tour. It's not a paid gig. He's just meeting with the guru, and the guru is taking him around. He has no money by Japanese standards, and you can't have a wedding in Japan, especially taking, as a foreigner, taking a Japanese woman in the 70s out of the country. You've got to throw down a bit of a ceremony, a wedding. He has no money. In his prayers, God says, just trust, surrender. Everything is under control. 6 weeks in Japan, at the end of his lecture tour, he goes to the mailbox. He picks up an envelope, opens the envelope. There's $7,000 in US cash in the mid-70s. Not bad for the mid-70s. With an anonymous note. This is for your wedding. He didn't tell anyone he didn't have any money. The wedding ceremony procedures are going forward. This is for your wedding. They get married, and they had me, and then moved to Ghana. And so all I'm saying is, the universe, your soul is bigger than your mind. And when you surrender, that's when you tap into the magic. So be open, be available. Do what you can to do the mental, emotional, psychological healing so that you can clear yourself, so that you can be open and just be available.
Oh, Kute, I am so grateful you told that story. Wow. I'm like chomping at the bit here. Like, then what? You know, and I couldn't help but think, you know, we hear about people getting people together, you know, blind dates, not knowing each other. And it's like God, spirit, universe, whatever you want to call it. They opened to a blind date and just went with it. And the magic happened, and it kept support.
We think we know, but we don't. We think we know, but we don't. But your soul knows. And I'm just inviting everyone to trust your soul. Just trust your soul. If you trust your soul, I promise you this, you will always be guided in the right place with the right people at the right time. But trust your soul.
Well, interesting parents that you came from. Not a surprise that you downloaded some very interesting DNA and some wisdom there. My goodness. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So tell us about the event that's coming up. I know it's coming up.
For those that maybe feel inspired or calling, twice a year I've done an event called Boundless Bliss, the Bali Breakthrough Experience. It's a 12-day experiential seminar training without walls in Bali. The last 10 years I've done 20, as of maybe time of folks listening, 21 of these events in Bali, and they are the pinnacle of my work. Life-changing, transformational, deep dive. I take about 18 to 20 people at a time. So if you're someone and you feel perhaps, you know, you feel a sense that you've been put on the planet for a purpose that is bigger than yourself, you feel ready to truly heal and clear away the layers of conditioning that have maybe limited or hindered you from being the love that you are. You feel ready to connect to your truth. You feel ready to share your gifts with the world. Then I invite you to join me on this journey. The next journey, and this is going to be the final Bali event that I do. Creating different events and other events as we speak, will be December the 5th through the 16th. That's December the 5th through the 16th, 2023. You can go to www.boundlessblissbali.com, boundlessblissbali.com. The info's there. Watch the video. You can apply and find out more there. And
Amazing.
then connect with me on Instagram, Kute Blackson, Facebook, Kute Love Now.
We're going to put all the links in the show notes. Yeah, they're going to make sure you scroll down and make sure you subscribe and follow Kute. He's obviously someone you want to keep in your ear. Kute, thank you so much power in your words and so much truth. And my heart is so open right now. Thank you.
Much love.
All right, that's our episode for today, y'all. I so hope you were taking notes, and the good thing is you can re-listen. And more importantly, if you know of someone who needs this message, somebody that is holding on tight, somebody that is in their fear and struggling, which is probably almost everybody you know, share this with them and make sure you subscribe to the station, and we will have another episode for you next week. Again, Kute, thank you, and goodbye, everyone. One more thing before you go. Have you taken my Discover Your Love Avatar quiz? It's a 2-minute quiz that can help you not only know your strengths, your superpower, because you have one, also identify some of your blind spots, some of the things that might be having you in your fear, having you behaving in ways that aren't in alignment with your highest self, the way you want to be when it comes to dating and relationships. And it'll also help you discover why maybe the stars haven't lined up for you yet. Bottom line is, you take this 2-minute quiz, you get a full report in your email with details on how to move forward in next level love, whether you want a partner or not. So you can go to midlifeloveoutloud.com/love quiz. The link is in the show notes as well. And if you haven't liked and subscribed to the station, I'm going to encourage you to do that too, so you don't miss any episodes. And I hope you got a ton out of today's. See you next week. Mwah.